Giving Habit, brought to you in partnership with the Majority Trust. Learn more about how they do philanthropy differently at majority.sg. One of the ideas that struck me most from my conversation with Dien Yuen from Daylight Advisory wasn't actually about philanthropy, it wasn't about wealth, it wasn't even about giving. It was about conversations. Specifically, the conversations many families simply aren't having. Because whether we're talking about money, values, purpose, legacy, or generosity, most of us assume these things somehow get passed down naturally. They don't. They get passed down intentionally, or they risk getting lost. Dien shared a fascinating observation from her work with families around the world. Many people spend decades building businesses, raising children, accumulating assets, and creating opportunities for the next generation. Yet remarkably few families ever stop and ask a simple question. What matters most to us? Not individually, collectively. What are the values we want to preserve? What kind of people do we hope our children become? What does a good life actually look like? And perhaps most importantly, what role does generosity play in that story? Now you might be thinking, this sounds like something for wealthy families, but let me offer you a different perspective. One of the most powerful points Dien made is that philanthropy is not about the size of your bank account. It's about the habits that shape your life. She uses a well-known framework called the 6 T's. Most people know 3 of them: time, talent, treasure. We can easily grasp how we can volunteer our time or put our skills to good use and donate wherever possible. So far, so good. But Dien expands that list to include ties, testimony, and truth. Let's think about that for a moment. We can give our time, we can share our skills, we can contribute financially. But it turns out we can also use our network to help others. We can share our story. We can live in alignment with our values. And in many ways, that final T, truth, might be the most challenging of all because it forces us to ask whether our stated values and our lived values actually match. Do we spend our time where we say our priorities are? Do we invest our resources in things we claim matter? Do our children see generosity in action or only hear us talk about it? These are uncomfortable questions, but they're important ones. And here's where it becomes practical. This week, I want to challenge you to have a conversation, not a grand family summit, not a strategic planning session, just a conversation, perhaps over dinner, perhaps on a walk, perhaps with your partner, your kids, your parents, or a close friend. Ask one question. What do we want to be known for? That's it. Don't start with money. Don't start with inheritance. Don't start with charitable donations. Start with identity. What do we stand for? What values do we hope outlive us? Because once we have clarity on that, the giving becomes much easier. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes people make is starting with the financial mechanism before they've clarified the purpose. People ask, should I set up a donor-advised fund? Should I establish a trust? Should I create a family foundation? These can all be excellent tools, but they're just tools. A donor-advised fund cannot create family unity. A trust can't create shared values. A foundation can't create purpose. Only conversations can do that. The structure should follow the vision, not the other way around. And that's particularly important in an age where we're witnessing one of the largest transfers of wealth in history. Across the world, trillions of dollars are moving from one generation to the next. But the real transfer isn't financial. The real transfer is cultural. It's the passing on of values, stories, relationships, responsibilities, and purpose. Money without values creates confusion. Money with values creates possibility. We don't need significant wealth to begin. We can all practice the 6 T's today. We can volunteer our time, mentor someone using our talents. We can make a modest financial contribution. We can introduce 2 people who could help one another. We could share our story, like Dien did on the Giving Habit. We can live our truth according to our core values. Every single one of us has access to those opportunities. Which brings me to one final thought. Dien spoke about a word that appeared repeatedly throughout our conversation. Flourishing. Not success, not achievement, not accumulation. Flourishing. The idea that a good life isn't measured solely by what we acquire, but by who we become and what we contribute. And perhaps that's the ultimate goal of giving. Not simply to improve the lives of others, but to become the sort of people who understand that our lives are connected to theirs. Flourishing is not a solo activity. We flourish together. That's something that resonates with me in particular and the work I do with the Majority Trust, who proudly sponsor the Giving Habit podcast. They do philanthropy differently. Their goal is to help Singapore as a society to thrive and to flourish. Like Dien, the Majority Trust understands that we flourish together and that generosity isn't just something we do at the end of life. It's a habit we practice throughout it. So maybe this week, start the conversation. Ask the question. Talk about your core values with someone you care about. Explore your own 6 T's and perhaps take one concrete action that moves generosity from being an idea to being a habit. Because the legacy we leave behind is rarely determined by what we own. It's determined by what we pass on. Thanks for tuning in. And if you like this show, please be sure to share with a friend. Together, we can grow the giving pie.